So super excited to welcome to the stage our panelists here. We have Greg from Cambridge Technology, we have Gaudu for JP Morgan Chase, and we also have Patrick from Morgan Stanley. And they are going to talk to us today about the importance of change agility when it comes to risk management, operational efficiency, client experience, and revenue growth. So with that, I think we're going to have you take it away.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks everybody for joining us here. So I think pretty relevant topic today, change agility. We've heard, at least I've heard through some of the speakers, reinforcing of all the different pressures and forces are facing banks, insurance companies, all companies these days. So really excited to have a couple of my old friends and colleagues here to talk through how we see change and how we're preparing and executing on it. Just where I'm coming from, Cambridge Technology, we help companies operationalize AI ML into their flows. My background is consulting and then also working in the major financial institutions, Freddie Mac, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman, Transurban. So I have a view from the inside and a view from the outside. What we'll do here is I've got a few questions for Gaudu and Patrick, and we'll leave some time at the end if there's any other questions. And then with that, I'll have them introduce themselves. Gaudu, you want to?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Greg. So, again, name is Gaudu. I primarily spend most of my career in various change roles relating to process and process automation. And SAP, BPI, or Signavio has been a big part of that for most of my career. So I think it's a very relevant topic with respect to the change and the agility. I think for a decent part of my career, I've focused on process improvement and engineering, and then more eventually that led into a bit more of an automation work. That was at Goldman. Eventually, I went over to Deloitte to take a little bit of that to market to some of the other banks and financial institutions, and eventually landed up over at JPMC, where I run a process engineering center of excellence for asset and wealth management, focused on a number of design and automation capabilities relating to process. So it's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, and very much excited to touch upon that and have a great discussion on it.
Patrick Kennedy, Morgan Stanley. So I've been in the industry for over 30 years. I started my career at Goldman. I've held a range of roles in technology development, operations, production roles, strategy gigs. So I've kind of seen different parts of the bank, different areas. I'm now in Morgan Stanley Wealth Management, which when I joined in 2014 was a completely new business for me. Very different business compared to more of the institutional trading side. And my current role is head of wealth management, innovation, and analytics in the operations organization.
Oh, excellent. And so the three of us actually first met and worked together at Goldman in a big transformation program, and Signavio was like a cornerstone of that. So it's kind of appropriate. Like we're big fans of the tool and have realized a lot of value from it. Let me start off, Patrick, with you. So what's really driving change at Morgan right now? And how is agility an important sort of attribute for what you're doing?
Yeah, so number one, it's a complex business, and I'm speaking specifically to the wealth side. The growth, I'll give you some metrics just to give you a sense for the type of growth Morgan has experienced. When I joined, we had $2 trillion in assets under management. We now have $4 trillion with a goal to get to $10 trillion over the next few years. Clients, we had 5 million back when I joined. We're at 18 million. So, huge growth in our business through acquisitions, certainly the E*TRADE acquisition being a big driver of that as well. In addition to that, we're also experiencing, I think everyone in this room is experiencing, tremendous amount of change from an emerging technology perspective. It's coming faster and furious than I can ever recall in my career, albeit OpenAI, blockchain, you name it. There's these emerging tech trends that are coming at us, and we need to be able to respond pretty quickly and rapidly. From a wealth perspective, we have constant product innovation that we need to keep up with. Clients demand it. Alternative investments, direct indexing is the new hot product in the kind of the evolution of mutual funds to ETFs. Now direct indexing is going to be the next big thing, and with that, impacts all our areas of the bank, but certainly the back office, where we need to be able to respond rapidly, quickly. Clients are demanding, not just external clients or internal advisors supporting those clients are demanding this innovation and change at a very rapid clip.
Good.
Yeah, and I think I would largely echo, right, many of the things that Patrick said. There's just a lot of drivers, I think, in the wealth and asset management space over the years. I think, traditionally speaking, and I've been at JP now a little bit over 3.5 years, and looking at that part of the bank versus other areas of the bank, historically there has been a little bit less investment in that space. I think, generally speaking, it was a high margin business, so when there's lots of margins to go around, oftentimes the solution was just add more people, right, when you have a problem to tackle, and that often sufficed. But I think as lots and lots of new players and technology are entering the market, and competition is increasing and the margins are decreasing, there's increased need for agility and to kind of change and to keep up with that. So, one, we have this Herculean mission of take all the old systems and legacy processes that we kind of, added a lot of people to support volume and growth in the past, and kind of bring that and modernize that. So there's a big change angle to that. But then as well as all of the various technologies and platforms and competition that's happening, how do we kind of keep up with that just to, on a continual basis, right? Not just modernize from the old stuff. I think another part of it is that there's a big segment of generation that's entering the wealth market space, and that's certainly leading into a lot of different types of business segments and different types of investments or the type of investments that we're seeing in the market are constantly shifting. So lots of areas that wasn't high volume are starting to be high volume as the market is not performing in certain areas. Other areas are picking up. So that constant need to be able to be very agile to respond to that and be able to go to market with the thing that's best fit for purpose is something that's very, very important. And that's part and parcel where I think we'll get into a little bit with respect to SAP and how we kind of drive that along with use that along with a number of other tools to support that change agenda and to kind of drive that agility for us.
Yeah, I mean, probably a good segue, right? So fast, growth, customers are changing, their desires are changing, margins are being compressed, regulatory, which we didn't really touch on, but all of this is, facing you guys. So then I guess, the next question, and Patrick, maybe I'll start with you here, is just, what has been the impact to date of looking at process, right, and in process as part of your change effort or your change ethos, right, whether with Signavio or other tools or other ways of thinking?
Yeah, so, I think maybe just to frame it a bit, Morgan made huge investment in building effectively big pipes from the field or where our advisors and their support staff. We have 16,000 advisors, 8,000 support staff around the country, and we have a tremendous amount of transaction flow. So a lot of investment was made in building heavy-duty tech to support that and bring those transactions and inquiries into the back office. But what we're experiencing is it's kind of that last mile. It makes its way in, and then there's a manual step.
Right.
And a lot of the work we did with Signavio was around, we did a very massive process mapping effort, and it revealed, some of them were fairly obvious, but it also revealed certain things that we were kind of surprised by. I think there's a deep recognition that, and investment being made to automate what's happening in the back office, albeit, RPA or low code or what have you, as well as maybe even more advanced capabilities such as using AI to make decisions, that today a human makes in the operations organization. But the other piece of it is clients feel it. We've done a lot around self-service. So, and because it's expected, our advisors, our external clients, they're using Amazon, they're using Apple. They expect everything to be very streamlined and easy to use. And we've built a lot on the front end, and I think some pretty slick solutions. The problem is they're now seeing more of the pain points in the back end because things get stuck. And I think it's just amped the need to streamline in the back office. It's frankly less about a cost savings play in my mind, though you certainly do have an efficiency. It's more about making the experience more frictionless, making it easier to do business with us.
And on that, has that grown? You said has sort of a focus on process grown in importance within leadership, within the bank? How you guys are thinking about it?
Yeah, because the noise level, especially from, our advisors are a key constituent, right? Because they're interfacing with their clients, right? So they're the source of revenue primarily, and we hear the noise, and they're not bashful.
Yeah.
So they'll let us know when things are broken, and that has increased the focus and investment on process improvement.
Gudu.
Yeah, I think echo a lot of things that Patrick said. I think process generally, and I think SAP BPI and Signavio is a part of that. We kind of consider it as part of a larger set of transformation tools, capabilities, a set of things that enable us to kind of drive that agility, and we couple that with things like RPA or robotic process automation bots, right, or analytics capabilities, AI, ML now, just workflow technology change and other changes. So having process and process improvement and kind of process engineering as part of all of those is certainly key in terms of making the whole change portfolio successful and agile in the way that we want it to be. When I think about the journey here, I think we touched upon it in a few different ways. I think to start with is to just basically have a foundation, right, of mapping out your process and getting everyone on the same page basically means that you can then use that as a foundation for each of your change initiatives. So often when people, kind of go down the path of change, different parties are on different page, and that simple fact that there's no single source of truth and a single lens in which people are seeing things through causes so much rework and so much, sort of inability to achieve the outcomes over time. So that's kind of the step one. I think that very much leads into how do you design your processes in the right way to make, and how do you envision for the future, sort of factoring in for many of those things. I think we also use, process in a lot of places. We have tons of location strategy moves. So every time we move a process from one location to the other, that's an opportunity to say, how does that process work? How should it be done? And can we do it any better, once we put it in the new location? So that it really just supports a lot of things like location strategy or foundation to change initiatives. But then when it comes to implementation, that's also pretty interesting to see, I think. From everything from just implementing bots or if you want to implement a workflow solution, or actually make some core technology changes, actually having the understanding of how the process works is really helpful to then be able to drive that. So we also taken that for decision automation. So we do quite a lot of our decision automation work through SAP BPI Signavio, where we map out the rules in Signavio and then just take an extract of that, put that directly into a rules engine to directly execute. And we've seen tremendous benefit coming on the back of that. In some cases, up to 30 to 40% improvement in our ability and speed to go ahead and deliver that change, to automate these business rules, to automate those decisions. And I think that's a big part of enabling, especially when technology budgets, right, can never stack up to the demand for the amount of change an organization has. And we're going through these massive things like cloud migration and other things that are eating up so much of that budget. These tool sets really enable a much bigger, broader population of people within the organization to be able to drive that change by themselves, and process mapping and process engineering is very much part and parcel of how you enable that group of people and how you enable those change tools and transformations, I think.
Yeah, interesting. So following up on that a little bit, so you guys are both in sort of the wealth, one area of the bank. How have you seen it propagate, or is it propagating into other areas of the bank? And is it helping with coordination? Are there any benefits you're seeing at sort of at more the enterprise level?
Yeah, maybe I can go first on that. I think, yeah, we are certainly seeing, at a place like JPMC, right? There's each of the areas of the bank tend to have their own transformation programs, but the types of emerging technologies and patterns and trends that folks are trying to adopt are largely the same. So we've gone ahead and created some central structures or bodies that will look across, right, the different parts of the bank and think about, hey, when you're thinking about process, when you're thinking about robotics, when you're thinking about low code, what tools and technologies do you use? How do you kind of align on methodology, governance, and so on and so forth? So I think it's certainly important. I think there can be some benefits of being able to use the same vendor across, right, multiple areas in terms of scale. But I think we try to do it where it makes sense. Trying to have every single organization in one tool in one place can be sometimes cumbersome too, right? So just because it's one bank doesn't mean that all the data, everything has to be synchronized into one. I think we try to think about where things need to be and where does it make sense to have things done the same way, living in the same tool, while not disrupting, right, the efficiency or being able to actually drive change by too much information in one place. And so I think it's about striking a balance of that, but at the same time, information sharing, what's happening, and making sure that you're kind of having at least a consistent strategy across the bank for some of these technologies and capabilities. I don't know, Patrick, what?
Yeah, I mean, just to build on that, and it's very similar at Morgan, there's more appetite to try new tools. There's more of a desire than ever to put things in the test lab. Now, that's a challenge for us, is getting a really good, robust test lab. And that's something we're making a big investment in, where you can actually have access to production data and so forth. But there's more appetite to try things, and that's and willingness to do it for short periods of time. Do pilots, do POCs, and try different vendors, because the vendor, and including Signavio and the Signavio suite. We are trying to be consistent across the firm and standardize on certain tools, but there are different needs. Yeah. And and when you deal with acquisitions, so when we acquired E*TRADE, they're a heavy UiPath, organization. Now, we actually think that's a pretty good RPA tool. We are looking at it for some other parts of wealth. Other parts of our firm are using Pega or Dynamics. So that does occur. I think over time, it will start coming together a little bit more. I think we're just at a stage many areas of our business where we're trying different things and seeing what sticks.
I know for, in our experience with, previous employer you guys aren't familiar with, but asset management company, we ran a program where we went process first, and there was another program going on in another part of the company that didn't quite go process first, and the difference was striking. I think they're on their 4th trip to the board for more funding and whatnot, but it's the value you can get out of it. I think, it's significant. And I think on a more kind of topical and maybe interesting part of this is, so we've talked about, OpenAI and sort of all of these new AI ML tools or capabilities or whatnot. How do you see this impacting, or, what's the effect on all of these new capabilities? How are you going to start to use them, bake them into your initiatives, and kind of how does that relate to process, and how are you using process in coordination with this, Patrick?
Yeah. So, I mean, Morgan's leaned heavily into AI already. For instance, we provide our advisors with a tool we call Next Best Action, where we provide them with information. We effectively align ideas to client needs and help guide the advisors on potential opportunities. And that's been hugely successful. There's a tremendous amount of data we're processing. And we're doing this very transparently with our clients. We're leveraging all of the fantastic client data that we get to also provide clients with information. Keep in mind, our business we have a big stock plan component. Not every client is an ultra high net worth, full service, serviced by an FA. We have clients across the entire spectrum. But we're thinking about those different cohorts and what more capabilities we can provide. And then on the process side, and certainly generative AI, I think we're all, I think collectively need to be looking at that and what it means and the implications, certainly around knowledge management and, content. And all of our firms have, endless amount of documents and content that we need to sift through. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And then on the process end, I think we're in the early stages, and I think we see some opportunity and I mentioned it earlier, there's a lot of decisions especially on our operations and decisions that are made. Can we have the machine do it? Can we build some intelligence around that so that we're not fully reliant on humans making the calls?
Yeah, I mean, I think similarly, we've been on the AI/ML journey, for a little bit of time, and I think it's evolving pretty rapidly. I think, just since ChatGPT has made things, fairly commercial recently, I think it's seen a lot of investment starting to go into that in addition. But, for the past few years, I think we've also been investing pretty heavily into the machine learning AI space. A lot of it has been around, doing some proof of concepts or trying to figure out how this technology can sort of, have some impact. I think similar to the example you mentioned, one that comes to mind is, something that recently went live called estimated time of completion. So when an advisor calls, a client calls in an advisor to basically take an action on their account, there's tons and tons of different tickets they can open, and that could lead to lots of different workflows. And one of the things that we've historically struggled with is basically figuring out how long will it take for this action to complete. I think it was a great use to basically say, let's look at the type of ticket, let's look at the type of request for the client segment and a bunch of data to say, okay, when do we think this ticket, based on the data that you have, will complete, and be able to kind of predict that, and then kind of update that prediction, as specific actions or things in the ticket happens. You could just add that back into the model and then take a new prediction out to say what it is. As a quick example, I think so. We're having lots of these little pockets of you know, experiment, I wouldn't say experiment, proof of concepts or small projects going on to prove out the value of using this. And I think that's really in preparation for gearing up to doing it in a much bigger scale, hopefully going forward. And I think, and there's a lot of effort and work with respect to governance, right? What is the right governance structures that you have to be able to set up? Because you know it works really well in tandem with some of these user tools, but we're certainly not at a place where we can open it up to citizen developers and just democratize, right, machine learning models across the board. But in preparation for that, like what governance do you need to kind of set in place? You know, do you need to think about ethical and responsible uses of AI, and how do you put those into principles first in preparation for that is some things that we've been thinking about. More from the process front, you know, there's, again, I would say two areas that are near and dear to my heart. One, just, you know, similar to any other change initiative, again, doing just AI without having the broader view of process and what you're trying to achieve in the process and understanding. You know, I think even studies, you know, you shared the article from Harvard the other day, talking a little bit about the need to kind of couple the ability to do process change first or process design first, and then, you know, introducing or coupling AI with that. So that seems to be a pretty, you know, interesting area for me to explore the convergence of those two things. And then I talked a little bit about automating decisions. This is one area where we're actively investing and sort of scaling up a bit. So we use Signavio and write our business rules in that, export the code. So we have the whole declarative side of the situation. And adjacent to that, you know, the predictive side of decisions using machine learning models is a very interesting thing. So for the type of decisions that are fairly complicated and it doesn't make sense, or to write the rules for them, it would be just too many rules to write. Being able to use machine learning to infer some of those rules, and then coupling them, right? So you could use that before your declarative, after, or as a subset. So there's lots of different patterns, very specific to automating decisions, automating business rules for declarative sort of rules and predictive rules for machine learning to kind of coexist and work really well together. We're really exploring some of the synergies of that, and I certainly hope that's an area that we're going to scale pretty well into as this thing comes to life.
Yeah, no, I got a lot to say there. I know we've got a couple minutes. I just wanted to see if there's a question or any questions that anybody had. If not, is there one here? Yep.
Be interesting to get your thoughts on the organizing construct for those, because it's one thing to just, you don't want to let 1,000 ships sail and you're just creating this like swarm of process models, but most firms currently are organized more functionally, but I know there's this move towards like a product service oriented view. So like, how do you think about designing the business architecture that would tie it all together in between the functional and the service-based?
You have some thoughts on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen different iterations of it. I think it's one of those things that you can organize in different ways, and I think it has different benefits for different types of things. I've seen it done in different ways, but I've never seen a one-size-kind-of-fits-all model. I think, yes, with the sort of move to a product-based organization and mentality, I think the functional groupings, as we used to do it, doesn't always lend well, right, to the decomposition as much anymore. And I think another one we're seeing also is with respect to, client journey. SAP has the client journey modeling component. Lots of people are kind of adhering or using that to map out, right, if a client is coming in with a particular problem, what does that journey look like? And you could certainly align your organization to client journeys as well. So I think it's a little bit of a trial and error. I think we've largely done it still on functional, but I think there's quite a bit of interest to check out the product side and the client journey side of things.
Great. That brings us to time, I think. Thanks, everybody, for joining us here. Patrick, Gudu, thanks. It was great to see you guys again. and-
Likewise, pleasure.
And appreciate it. All right.
Thank you.
Okay.